Good morning. My name is Megan Hodapp. I'm with the Governor's Office of Business and Economic Development. Thank you for being on this webinar today. The webinar we are hosting is through the Office of Small Business Advocate, which is the unit of the Governor's Office of Business and Economic Development, and also the U.S. Small Business Administration. For the California 2017 wildfires. Just for some of the speakers on the GoToWebinar, the webinar platform that we're using today, at the far right of your screen, you should see a vertical toolbar. The toolbar will provide you with access to audio and visual for the presentation. If you experience any technical audio issues, please click Help at the top of the tool and then stop Sound Check. This will allow you to check your audio configuration. Participant lines will remain muted during the entire presentation. If you have a question during the webinar, please submit it during the presentation via the questions chat box. The questions chat box is located in the middle of the toolbar. I will respond to questions during the question and answer session at the end of the presentation. At the top left of the toolbar, you will see two icons. The blue icon with a white box allows you to view the presentation in full screen mode. The blue icon with a picture of a hand allows you to raise your hand to ask questions during the webinar. This feature will not be used since questions will be addressed at the end of the webinar via the questions chat box. I will now turn this presentation over to Bill Kuntz from the U.S. Small Business Administration.
Very good. Very good. Thank you, Megan. Appreciate the introduction. Again, my name is Bill Kuntz, and I'm a public information spokesman, U.S. Small Business Administration, or SBA. And for those of you who don't know the SBA, it is a federal agency, a U.S. government agency. One of the things that people are often the most surprised to hear when SBA responds to a disaster is that the SBA is able, let's just forward here, I'm working with we're trying to get our slides to move here. You don't want to look at the same slide the whole time I talk. But the SBA is the federal government's primary source of long-term recovery dollars in the wake of disasters. And now there's our slide for that. Today I'm going to be talking primarily about SBA's business loan program, which is business loans for small businesses only, and it's money for working capital for lost income that a business has suffered for the recent wildfires in Northern California. And we call these economic injury disaster loans. In addition to this part of the program that SBA has, we obviously can help businesses that have suffered fire damage, and we can also help homeowners and renters. The deadline, as of this moment today, the deadline for businesses or individuals to apply for assistance for literal fire damage is December 11th. That's next Monday. And so the deadline to apply for physical damage is about to be here. And so going forward, the only part of SBA's loan program that will be available is the part that's for just economic injury, economic losses that a business has suffered due to the fires. I hope to go through these slides in about 15-20 minutes, and then if you're able to send in a question, glad to answer your questions. So these are loans that are for a fixed rate. They're for 15 or 30-year term, so they're a long-term loan. And the key thing that I want to say right up front is there's no cost to apply for these loans, and you're not obligated to accept the loan if SBA approves a loan for you. So my advice is apply for the loan, see what SBA may offer, and give yourself an option to help your business continue in operations if you need this, possibly need this kind of help. You're under no obligation. So there's no prepayment penalty. And as I said before, the payment term is for 15 years or 30 years. We look at your ability to repay a loan payment, and we calculate whether or not you can afford a 15-year payment. If you just can't quite afford a 15-year size payment, then we would write your loan at 30-year. You can pay the loan off early. So again, this is a loan for a business to pay its bills, pay its employees, If you've been impacted because of the fire, even though you weren't damaged by the fire, you could be eligible to obtain one of these loans. And these loans are intended to provide capital, to provide money, to pay the bills that the business would have been paying ordinarily had the fire not occurred. As it says in the slide, we can help non-farm businesses only. Small agricultural cooperatives are eligible. We actually can't help an agriculture business. And private nonprofit organizations are also eligible. The amount of money that you can borrow is based on what the business has lost. So even though the program goes as high as $2 million for one business loan, the amount that you're eligible for borrowing is equal to the amount of money that SBA calculates that you need to pay your bills now and going forward through whatever period of time we think that it will take for you to recover and be back to normal operations. One good feature about this program is, well, let's say today your business was approved for a $50,000 loan. You go forward, you spend that money to pay your operating costs, and in 6 months, you haven't recovered as we thought you would, let's say. You could come back to the SBA, and for the very same loan, you could apply for, say, 2 or 3 more of capital, increase the loan amount for the money that you continue to need. So the loan isn't set $1 amount forever. It's possible to come back and increase the loan amount. We can't loan to some businesses, a speculative business where there's nothing at risk, a multi-level sales organization, a pyramid, or a hobby business. If you don't file a tax return for your business, and we consider it a hobby business, then that's a business that's ineligible with these loans. That's okay. There we go. So again, non-farm businesses can borrow, private nonprofit organizations can borrow, and we can lend up to $2 million for economic injury. We can also loan money, as I mentioned, for physical damages, anything that got burned by the fire. But again, that deadline is December 11th. If you obtained a loan for actual fire damages plus money for working capital, the two categories combined can only total a maximum of $2 million. And there are the interest rates as of today. Normally, a business loan will be approved at 3.305% for either fire damage or economic injury, the EIDL on the slide. Nonprofits can borrow at 2.5%. And then you see off to the right on this slide, grayed out, the interest rates that SBA offers to homeowners and renters. Very affordable, very powerful loan, very unique kind of financing for someone that's suffered from the fire if they have damage. So if you have employees as a business owner, you'd want to ask them, have you applied for an SBA disaster loan for your home losses? There's a second tier of interest rate that says to the left, credit available elsewhere. It's kind of a complicated way of defining this concept, but what SBA will do when you apply for a loan is look at your financial capacity. If you are a wealthy, well-off business with a lot of cash reserves, it's possible you may not qualify for an economic injury loan because the SBA determines you have the cash on hand to continue to operate the business going forward. So we do look at that. For a private nonprofit, same thing. And for those businesses that apply for a loan for fire damage, we could possibly approve a loan for a business that has significant cash reserves and economic capacity, but we would not approve it at a subsidized below market rate of 3.3%. We would approve it at a market rate instead for that business that's well off at 6.610%. There's no way to know what interest rate SBA will offer you if you're approved for a loan without applying. And so most of the loans that we approve are at the below market subsidized rates, those rates in red. But be prepared. It's possible if you're well enough off, the SBA might approve your loan at a market rate as opposed to a below market rate. I mentioned that the deadline, if you have fire damage, is December 11th. The deadline to apply for an economic injury loan with SBA is July 12th of next year, 2018. So even though you may not need money today, if your recovery from the impact of the fires doesn't happen as you expect it to through January, February, March, whatnot, you could come to the SBA and apply for a disaster loan well into next year, into 2018. My advice for anyone that's thinking about one of these loans is don't delay, don't wait, apply now. There's no disadvantage to applying early. And the advantage is getting through the process. With all of the hurricanes that we've experienced in America this year, and now these wildfires, and as we take this webinar today, there's a wildfire burning in Southern California and Europe, so yet another disaster. There's a little backlog with SBA's processing. For business owners, it may take as long as 4 weeks to get a loan approval. So the sooner you apply, the quicker SBA can give you a response. And let's see here. Thank you, Nathan. Right, there we go. Our buttons, advance the slides is a naughty button. It won't work every time. So of course there are requirements to eligible for one of the disasters from SBA. Your property has to be in a declared county, and where this says damaged property, that would include business that is damaged economically, that has economic loss. You have to have an acceptable credit report. It doesn't have to be perfect, but it has to be acceptable to SBA. And your business has to show an income level prior to the fire that would support a disaster loan monthly payment. Here are the counties that are declared for the Northern California wildfires, which also includes the county of Orange, which is in Southern California. There was a fire near Anaheim that was included in this disaster declaration. So for physical fire damage, you have to be one of those counties in the top tier: Butte, Lake, Mendocino, Napa, Nevada, Orange, Sonoma, and Yuba. And in all of the other counties listed on this slide, a small business can apply for an economic injury disaster loan. And you can see that even if you have a business in Reno or Sparks, Nevada, you could apply for a disaster loan because Nevada County, California touches Washoe County, Nevada. And that's kind of interesting that this disaster declaration spills over into an adjoining state, which it commonly does. These disaster loans are only available to give a business owner money that is for a loss they have suffered that's not compensated for by some other source. So if you had business interruption insurance and it paid you some dollars, you couldn't duplicate those dollars with an SBA disaster loan. You could get, if we said your damages, your losses are greater than the amount of money you're receiving on your insurance policy, then yes, we could loan for that difference. There are some other reasons when you may not be eligible for a disaster loan. And certainly one of the bigger ones is if you haven't complied with your federal obligations. For instance, you haven't filed your tax returns, that would be grounds for SBA to say that you're ineligible for one of these disaster loans. For a payment of 15 or 30 years. And when your loan is approved, the SBA may require you to obtain insurance coverage in the amount of the loan. For all loans concerning actual fire damage, if you borrow $25,000 or more, SBA will require you to pledge collateral if you have collateral. That would be a situation where we would also require you to have hazard insurance. And if you have a property in a flood zone, we'd require you to obtain flood insurance as well. Again, this is just for a business that has suffered literal fire damage. And there again is the deadline next week, December 11th. If you've got physical fire damage, is your deadline to apply for a loan. to replace or repair the things that were burned. And for businesses that have economic loss, you have until next July 12th, 2018 to apply. So what's the thing, what should I do first if I want to go to SBA and apply for a disaster loan? And it might be easier to do that than I'm making it sound. I hope that's true. The first step is to register with FEMA. And yes, even though FEMA does not have a business program, they do not offer a grant program to businesses, we ask that you register with FEMA because it's a good idea. You can go to disasterassistance.gov to register with FEMA, or you can walk into the local disaster assistance center that's open in the areas that were involved in the fire. Some of those centers are about to close. So you need to go online to find out where these centers are located if you don't already know. And here's my slide that talks about why you might want to register with FEMA first before coming to SBA. FEMA won't give you anything, but you'll then be on a list of businesses that were impacted by the fire that FEMA maintains. And it's possible that down the road, in the months to come, there could be grant programs that pop up that the state perhaps might offer. Money available for businesses that were impacted by the fires. And how would these programs know to contact your business? The answer is they would know to contact you because you registered with FEMA before you came to SBA, and now you're on a list of businesses that were impacted that FEMA maintains. So there are 3 ways to apply with SBA. You can go online to our website at www.sba.gov and click Apply for a Disaster Loan, and that will take you to our secure portal, our online electronic loan application, and you can fill it out as you would fill out, for instance, a TurboTax tax return. You answer a question, and that screen takes you to the next question. You go through that process. You can obviously walk into one of the recovery centers that are open in the Northern California area. You could actually walk into any recovery center in the country that's open and apply for an SBA disaster loan. Where are those locations? Go to SBA.gov and click on Locations to Receive Assistance. If you're on the SBA website, in the search box, type in Disaster Assistance, and that will take you directly to all of these links that I'm discussing. There are several ways to click on different links within the program, the web page rather, excuse me. But typing in disaster assistance in the search box on the SBA's main web page is probably the easiest way to get to the links that you need. You can also do it the old-fashioned way, which is to mail us a paper application. We recommend that you not do that, that you go through the electronic process because it's so much faster. But if you wanted to, you could, again, on SBA's webpage, click on Loan Information, and that would take you to a link where you could download and print paper applications, fill them out, and then mail them into the SBA. And there's the phone number. If you've got questions, we want you to give us a call. We're happy to answer your questions at the 800-659-2955 main telephone number. You can go to our website again, sba.gov/disaster. That's getting you deeper into the disaster portion of our webpage. There's a link below if you want to send SBA an email and ask questions as well. That's the end of our slideshow. Megan, do we have any questions that have come in? I'd love to answer questions.
We do have one. What qualifies as fire damage?
Well, we have a question, what qualifies as a fire damage? Well, certainly in the case of physical fire damage, that would be something that got burned in the fire. It could be real estate, furniture and fixture, equipment in the building, inventory, any physical thing that was burned by the fire. As far as economic injury goes, again, for a business that had no fire damage, the fire did not touch the business, that business owner could say, I've lost my customers because of the fire. Accounts that we had booked canceled because of the fire. Obviously, Northern California wine country is a tourism-based area, and we've heard many stories from many business owners saying we've had a tremendous dropping off of customers because of the fire, the effect of the fire. And so you would need to tell the SBA that you've lost business and attribute it to the impact of the fire, however that related to your business.
The next question is, what about inventory that was lost to lack of power?
Yes, if the fire caused the power to go out and that caused you to have inventory damage or lose your inventory, absolutely. You lost your inventory because the fire knocked out the power. So that would certainly be an eligible purpose to apply for funds from the SBA's disaster loan program.
Right now, I'll
if you're thinking you have a question, now's your time to type it into the webinar bar, and I'd be glad to answer it.
While we wait, this webinar recording will be available on the California Business Portal, which is www.sba.gov. There's a tab for wildfire assistance, and the recording of this up there. If you have additional questions, you can call me directly. Megan Host. My number is 916-322-2716. And my email is megan.hodap@gov.ca.gov. My last name is spelled H-O-D-A-P-P. If you have a loan already, can that be delayed or restructured because of the hardship?
Yeah, the question is, if you already have a loan, can that be delayed or restructured? If you're talking about an existing SBA disaster loan, applying for a new loan would not impact or change your existing disaster loan. You can't refinance an existing disaster loan with SBA with a new disaster loan. Normally, these disaster loans for economic injury, you would only use that money as working capital. You would only use it to pay your operating expenses. You wouldn't use it to re-amortize or refinance any existing long-term debts. That's something that's not eligible. If you have, for instance, a line of credit that you normally pay off every month or so in the normal course of operations for your business, yes, that's something that the SBA could perhaps pay off with these dollars from a disaster loan. But that would be because it's a loan that you normally pay down very frequently. It's not a long-term debt. As far as delays, I'm not sure what your question is about a delay. Okay. If you have a regular SBA loan in process with a bank, where the bank is the lender and the bank is lending its own funds and the loan is backed by the SBA, that is a completely separate portion of the SBA program. The disaster loans that I'm talking about today are offered by the SBA as a direct lender. SBA is loaning money to the community, and that money is coming right out of the U.S. Treasury. There are no banks involved with these disaster loans in this program. So applying for a disaster loan with SBA would have no impact or bearing on the processing of a SBA-backed loan with the bank. So I hope that answers your question.
Okay. Are there any additional questions? Okay, we'll wait a couple of minutes and see if any come in.
Yeah, there's got to be a couple more out there, Megan. I always enjoy answering questions because that's when people think of something that I would never have thought to mention, and it gives us an opportunity to talk about another little component or aspect or angle about these loans. I've met a lot of business owners that have no idea how they're going to pay their bills, and this is what these loans are designed to do. Obviously, as a business owner, you don't want to acquire any more debt than you have to. And obviously, no one wants to owe the U.S. government if they don't have to. But for some businesses that have been severely impacted, and you've invested so much of your time, money, and effort in years in building your business. This, for some business owners, this is the only way they can save their business, and so it's a very powerful program. I know we've helped a lot of people in the community already, and we'll continue to do that. So back to that they are apply for one of these loans and see what SBA might be able to do. You're not obligated to take the loan, and it costs nothing to apply for the loan. So why not? Why not give yourself that possible option? Is that a question?
Yeah, we got one more question. The fires have taken away the increase in our business because the hotels are occupied by locals and visitors aren't coming. How would you put a value on it? Would it just be a working capital loan or for survival for the meantime?
That's a question I'm not sure I fully understand. The process that you go through when you apply for one of these loans, obviously the SBA is going to determine the issues involved. But as the business owner, your side of that coin is to tell SBA, here's how we've been impacted, here's what this means in real dollars for our business, and share that story with our loan officer so that we can, together with you, to come up with a way to put a value on exactly what it is you've lost, suffered, and need. And so this is a very dynamic process that happens where you and the loan officer work together for you to explain so that we understand what it is that's happening, how this is impacting your business. SBA will obviously apply that information to what we know of how businesses work, and we will jointly arrive at a dollar figure. Hopefully, it's both agreed upon. That says this is what you need per month. This is the amount of money, the shortfall you're experiencing, and that's going to determine the amount of loan that you're eligible to borrow. If you're thinking about dollars you're forecasting into the future, that gets a little more tricky. You have to tell a little more story about how you come up with those numbers if it's something that hasn't happened yet. So all I can say there is apply for the SBA loan and work with your loan officer and explain your particular unique circumstances. We'll do everything we can to try to come up with the most equitable and positive approach to whatever situation you find yourself in. We look at all loans on an individual basis.
The business owner has the opportunity to work with the loan officer and not just have to come up with a number on their own.
Absolutely, absolutely. There are some cases where they might not understand what is happening without being told.
Okay, one more question. Would I need to go to a bank and ask for someone from the SBA, or do I have to go directly to the SBA?
Well, for all of this, talking about today, this webinar about the disaster loan program, you would not go to a bank, you would go to the SBA directly, and you would do that either online or at one of the disaster recovery centers that have been opened in the wake of these wildfires. So yes, you have to go directly to the SBA itself, and for this disaster, not to any bank. You can't access this part of the SBA's program in any other way. And to review it, well, there's again, call 1-800-659-2955, and we have loan officers and customer service representatives available at that number that can answer general questions and also get pretty deep in the weeds as far as specifics for you in terms of how to proceed. It's obviously a lot nicer to talk to a human being than it is to disembodied voice over the internet, and that's my first recommendation. Come and talk to us in a center that's open or on the phone and talk to a live person, and we'll be able to get you all the answers you need.
Okay, I got another question. What are the loan amounts, like the minimum loan amount and the max loan amount?
Right. Well, the max loan amount would be $2 million if that was the amount of loss you suffered. So we can go to $2 million. There's actually a provision if you are a major employer in a small community, and your business is the one that provides the bulk of all the jobs in that community, we can actually bend the $2 million limit quite a bit. We've made loans $100 million to businesses because they were the major business in town. I don't think think there's such a business in these areas here in Northern California, given this economic landscape, but that's a possibility. But normally $2 million is the loan limit as far as how much you can borrow. As far as the smallest amount, our computer program can't go below $100. So I believe $100 would be the lowest amount you could borrow. Your first payment would probably be $100. I have seen actually a loan of $400 on the books. So that's the smallest I've personally seen in our computer system. But there is no, I think for the purposes of your question, there is no minimum. Okay. Here's a question. I have 8 employees, and because of the fires and the impact to the tourism industry, we are considering closing or moving. Well, obviously, if you close the business, you wouldn't want to obtain a loan to keep the business alive. But relocation is a possibility with these disaster loans from SBA. If you are relocating within the same county, you could do that by setting back up in a new facility. And of course, that question would obviously involve physical damage disaster loan. And so, yes, SBA could loan you money based on what you lost at the fire location. And let's say you had a business that, let's say it's worth $1 million that burned to the ground. And SBA offered you a $1 million loan to rebuild that burned down business. You could take that $1 million and go to a different location in the county and rebuild the business at a different site, and that's perfectly acceptable with the SBA program. You'd need to talk in detail about your particular circumstances with a loan officer, and they would work with you to come up with a relocation plan. To obtain a loan to relocate, you have to first tell the SBA, here's the exact location I intend to relocate to. So you can't just say, I'd like a loan approval for some unknown location somewhere else. You'd have to actually say, I'd like to get a loan approval. I'd like to relocate to such and such an address. For someone who has fire damage, again, let me repeat you, the deadline to apply for a loan for fire damage is December 11th. And I would say to any business owner who isn't sure, are we going to relocate? Are we going to rebuild? Put in a loan application with SBA and see what SBA might offer. Now you've got an option on the table. Will you accept it? Will you change your mind? Will you do something else? Anything is possible. You're not obligated to, you're not bound to that SBA disaster loan if SBA approves it. But you won't know what's possible if you don't apply.
This one's a little confusing. How much can you ask for? And then the next statement is, I guess that has to be worked out with the loan officer. So I think that someone's trying to ask like how much they can ask for, which goes back to the maximum minimum and working with the loan.
When you apply for one of these disaster loans, one of the things, the process the SBA will go through, will ask you to complete a summary of your income over the months for the last years. And by telling SBA, here's what my normal revenues are month to month throughout a year, up and down throughout the tourist season, whatnot. This is what the business normally sees as its income. So we look at that and we now have a baseline of what your income is in a normal world for the business. Now we look at what's happened since the fires and we see where it's gone. And that difference, that let's for an example say that you normally earn $10,000 a month, and since the fire you're earning $0,000 a month. Well, SBA would then look at that and say you need a $10,000 loan per month because of the situation you find yourself in. And we think, after talking with you and given what we know about the economy and the location where you operate, we think it's going to take you, let's say in this example, it's going to take you 7 months to get back to normal. So if you need $10,000 a month working capital to run the business, pay the bills, pay your employees, and we think you need 7 months of help to get to a normal, back to normal, then SBA would consider loaning you $10,000 times 7 months. $70,000 would be the loan amount they would consider approving. And so the amount of money that you're able to borrow is completely dependent upon what it is you've lost. It's not, you can't just say, I'd like $100,000, please, because this is a great interest rate and I could sure use that money. It doesn't work that way at all. The SBA looks at the income stream, the trend, the historical revenue that the business has earned, look where you are given the current state of affairs, and that difference going projected into the future for some months, 6 months, a year, whatever it is for your particular business. That difference is what determines the amount of loan SBA will consider making. So that dollar amount is created on an individual business basis. Every business will have a different set of books, and so the SBA will come up with a different dollar amount to potentially loan to that business offer.
How does SBA handle a new business that's either in the first or second year of business that doesn't have that track record?
Obviously, like any lender, the SBA is looking at the track record, the performance in the past of the business. So if you have a brand new business that's only been on the books for weeks or months, it's obviously it's an uphill climb to convince the SBA that, yes, this business could be earning this much money per month going forward. And it's cool to get a loan from the SBA for a brand new business. We've made such loans before, but you need to be able to provide to the SBA a very complete and exhaustive forecast with supporting information as to what this business potential has. Otherwise, the SBA wouldn't have any way of knowing how much the business could possibly afford to pay. So again, that's going to be done on a one-on-one basis with that business owner. That's a tough question to answer in general terms, but truly the burden is on the applicant to show the SBA, here's the story of what this business could pay if things were back to normal, and this is what the business could afford to repay for a disaster loan, and you've got to provide a compelling story along those lines.
Does it make any difference if the business is already an SBA client, if they are already running off of a SBA-backed loan? Sure.
No, if your business started with an SBA loan or you grew your business with an SBA loan from the bank, to the SBA disaster program, that's just another debt that the business pays. So we don't have any. There's no favorite consideration or anything like that. We look at each business in the same way, and that is what is your income, what are your debts, what are your operating costs, what is your cash flow, and that's all that the SBA is looking at. We're a repayment-based lender. One of the positive things is if the business has no equity, you have no collateral, that makes no difference to the SBA disaster loan program. We're able to make a loan to any business, even if it has no collateral, no equity, and perhaps in its assets. We're simply looking at the business's ability to repay the disaster loan. So other loans with banks that are SBA-backed loans to the SBA disaster program, that's just another liability. That's a great question. I told you we'd get questions, Megan. Well, thank you for someone's compliment us and saying we're awesome. Thank you for the compliment. I don't think we're awesome, but I think the SBA's disaster loan program is awesome. I've been with the program for quite a few years, and I've met a lot of people that have suffered some pretty amazing disasters, and so many of them have said to me that I can think of one gentleman who got millions of dollars disaster loan for his business. He was a major employer, and he said, Bill, if it wasn't for the SBA helping me when my bank couldn't, I'd be pumping gas today. Not that pumping gas is a bad thing, but he was a manufacturer, and he not only kept 100 employees employed with his SBA disaster loan, he and some other businesses were the bedrock cornerstone of a huge economic resurgence in a particular town in Louisiana where, because of his business, they created a whole lot more prosperity. And this is the SBA disaster program is the way the U.S. Congress pumps money into a community after a disaster like these wildfires that we've suffered in California this year. A lot of these communities would have a very hard time getting back to normal at all if it weren't for the fact that the federal government programs come to bear and help the community, help the businesses stay alive, help them pay their employees, and all of those dollars are spent right here in the area where it's needed the most. So I think that's awesome.
Any additional questions? And to kind of conclude the webinar, I will once again give my information, and then if Bill wants to give his,
Sure.
If not, I can connect you guys directly to him if you reach out to me. So my name's Megan Hodapp, and I'm with the Governor's Office of Business and Economic Development. My phone number, my direct line is 916-322-2716. If you can please leave me a message. I'm actually currently working out of Santa Rosa, but that phone number is in Sacramento. If you leave me a message, I can check it and call you back. Or you can email me. My email address is megan.hodapp@gov.ca.gov. My last name is spelled Hodapp. And then if Bill wants to give
Sure.
his information.
Yeah. Again, my name is Bill Kuntz, and I'm a public information officer with the SBA. So I'm just a spokesperson for the program. For those of you that have a question for our loan officer and want to get specific answers for your specific situation, I want you to call 1-800-659-2955, and we can answer your questions at that number very easily.
And I do see I'm a lot of you are probably in the Santa Rosa area as well. I'm actually working out of the Sonoma County Economic Development Board once a week to help businesses who are local. So if you would like to meet up with me and kind of have a one-on-one and talk about the resources that are available to you, I can definitely do that. If you want either that phone number or send me an email, we can schedule a time to meet. So we can do that too.
And I see our last question, Megan. Someone says I'm in Santa Rosa also. You have a resource at the old Press Democrat building at 427 Mendocino Avenue. And that Disaster Recovery Center, Local Assistance Center, that center is still open. I do believe it will be open beyond next Monday, which is the physical fire application deadline. So I would encourage you to stop by there. You don't need an appointment. They're open from 10 to 6, I believe, Monday through Friday, and on the weekends as well. But you can stop by that office anytime and talk to SBA's customer service representatives in person, get answers, get specifics. And heck, if you're of the mind, you can sit down and apply for a loan on the spot. We'll complete your loan application online on our laptops, which we have at the center. And again, face-to-face is best.
Okay, well, I think that concludes our webinar. I want to thank Bill for being here and for joining us. Like I said, the slides and the audio of this presentation will be posted to the California Business Portal. If you want me to email you the slides, you can also email me directly. So once again, thank you for your participation. And if you have any questions, don't hesitate to reach out to us. Thank you.